So, so yeah, I want to touch on a couple of things, and I think you both are right. I think one thing this is a move made a year late, right?
Yeah.
If this is the route we were going to take with Bryce, we should have done it up front. That's neither here nor there. I will say this back to your comment about the tape, Jack. Um, it's not about the tape. I think what you have to look at just in the totality is the quality of the game, right? And I get tired of people talking about, well, you should have known when you drafted him he wasn't going to be like, body size, this, that, the third. Well, Kyler Murray was the same way and came into the same sort of turmoil when he came into the league. And I will tell you, Kyler Murray struggled, but at least you saw glimpses of what he is to become. The problem we have with Bryce is we don't see what's to become. And the decision to bench him, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, whether David Tepper played into it right now, to me, I think it was the right decision for him. In my mind, I think it was
for
right
who? For Canales or for Bryce
for,
Young?
for Bryce. I think it was good for Bryce.
And
I think it was.
And I agree with him.
He would have ended up getting really, really hurt.
I agree with you.
Honestly,
I
looking
agree
at
with
the
you.
way looking at the way he's playing scared. What happens when you're scared on the football field?
Oh, you get hurt.
You guys have played the game.
You make mistakes. You act rash.
Those mistakes lead to what though?
Yeah,
Those are mistakes
getting
lead to
hurt,
what,
and
though?
you jeopardize yourself.
And
boom.
And JB, I'm glad you said that because that was something I was thinking as well. Like, hey, he may need this time away from
That's
being
right.
the starter. Like I think
That's right.
we may have undersold like how much of a beating he took last year in terms of mentally. Like physically, we all know, but mentally, I think he is somewhere lost in the mist somewhere. And I'm watching a kid that doesn't even look like himself in terms of how he played last year. No. Like go to the Houston game last year. Go to that last drive where he walks him down.
Yeah.
That ain't the same kid I saw in his first 2 weeks at all.
Or go to, the Miami drive where he's putting his body on the line, but in a way that he's like, I'm trying to get to this next play to get this first down. He's running around, making passes that he has not made at any point in time. And that's where, though, I don't think it's necessarily the best thing for him per se. I don't think any of this is the best case scenario for him.
No, that's the
best.
This has been pretty bad all the way around.
But because this is my concern, and this is where I'm not a Bryce apologist by any means, way, shape, or form. But we'll go back and forth on this. The issue is much larger than him, and I think that that's where I get this is where as Tepper you need to butt the fuck out. Like whatever, I'm serious. Like wherever you think the problem is, shut up and let the people you've put in place deal with it. Because making this decision this quickly on, you can say it's to conserve him or whatever it is, but you looked at the pass protection. He was only rushed 6 times.
Right.
Now, in those 6 times he was rushed, he was hit, I think it was 3 of them in this last game. Mm-hmm. All of them coming from a side that I know JB is very heated about. But, in terms of...
We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that right
But what I'm saying is that, even past that point, clearly it's in his head. He's got the yips because you talked about the overthrown passes, the behind the shoulder thrown passes. He's not hitting the mark. He looked more inaccurate than ever, which was his biggest trait, was his accuracy.
Right.
On the ball, off his back foot, on the move, what have you. He was accurate. Now he's freaking out because he thinks he's got someone on his heels every 5 seconds. And to me, the issue then becomes the play calling. I don't even think any of those play calls... I think there's maybe 10 plays last Sunday that I was like, okay, Bryce messed that up. Right. Outside of that, it was halfback run. You gained 2 yards, halfback run again, you lost 5 yards, screen. That was every single drive. Right. And I'm trying to figure out now, is this Canales as a rookie head coach not, trusting in his abilities or trusting in Bryce's abilities? Or is it him calling these plays and Bryce is taking the quick checkdowns because he's scared to let the play develop?
Right. And
so I've got a question. Is Canales calling plays?
He is.
Is Canales the one? He is the one. He is the one calling plays.
Him and
or is it his OC?
Him and Idzik have an understanding, quote unquote, and it's a philosophy that they built together. But at the end of the day, he's the one calling the plays.
Okay. So I will address that in a minute because I agree with you. I think the play calling and the strategy going into how they call plays is very clunky and it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
There's no continuity. There's no consistency. If you can run Chuba for 12 yards, logic will tell you, run him again.
And that's where, why was Bryce even put in that situation on the pick? Chuba had just bombed it for 12 yards, and you were just crossing midfield. And so, and he even said it in his press conference. Bryce said, like, on that play, we called the play, we called a pass. I got overzealous and greedy, wanting to continue to move momentum that we haven't created, and threw a pass that he shouldn't have thrown. But you take that out of his hands by calling the run play that you're supposed to call in that next one, or at the very least, a play action to get him out into open field.
You know,
let's be honest though. Bryce is a scapegoat right now.
He is. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and
we can all recognize that. We can all recognize that,
yeah,
right? We can all agree.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing when we talked about it pre-show. That's one thing I do hate because he doesn't deserve to be the scapegoat for what's been a bigger issue looming around for several years now. And I mean, I guess the only answer I would have for Bryce right now in terms of how they want to, if he were to play again this season, the exact same way that we got Sam Darnold to play decent football in 2022 when you ran the shit out of it.
And that's what we should be doing from the get-go.
What his line's built for, too.
Exactly. Like this, and Canales even said that's what they built this team around, a run-heavy offense back to Panthers football like it used to be. Because to be honest, and I saw it again from Miles this week, Miles is only showing that his legs are healthy, and he's got the ability to make those powerful runs if he's given enough reps to do so.
Yeah.
Which I don't think he should be getting the majority of the reps.
No.
Chuba definitely should be.
The better. Chuba's right now the best back. Miles Sanders is playing better.
Exactly.
And that's right. That's what we did. That's what we wanted to see coming into the year.
So let that duo do its work. Like, let them carry the load because you don't have, like, your quarterback is, like we said, he's gun shy right now. He has got the yips.
Well, at this junction, they're not gonna change the philosophy now.
But I see
now they're gonna run Andy Dalton. They're gonna try to make the point of it's not them, it's him. Yeah. Let's keep it 100%. That's exactly what this move was about.
It is.
This move is about proving the fact that Bryce is being viewed and could be seen as, and I'm gonna say it's not true, one of the biggest busts of all time. That's what they're trying to prove.
Which in me.
Now we can sit here and argue. We can sit here and argue that if you want to, but I think that's
no. That logic is completely sound because it's coming from what we've only understood to be a toxic environment. Tepper is trying to again prove that he has made the right decision, but in doing so, this is how he's done it. He went out on a limb for Matt Rule. You know, he went way out of his way for Matt Rule. Didn't need to. It stops working, so then he makes Matt Rule his own decision, the scapegoat. Then he brings in Frank Reich. Gets all of his assets pushed on Bryce Young. Frank Reich can't get the best out of Bryce Young in this team. Well, Frank Reich's got to go. But you were the one who facilitated wanting Frank Reich. And now Bryce Young, who you literally, if you believe the rumors, was the main reason why that regime didn't go for C.J. Stroud, you're now giving up again on your guy that it was your decision to bring in. And so it's like, look at the pattern on the wall here. Every time you put your bald head in, you get crap out of it. So stop. You're not Jerry Jones, and you shouldn't want to be.
Right. Because even Jerry's put together a squad right now that can play.
Yeah, and then they're getting the crap kicked out of them by the Saints in Jerry's world. So be that as it may, what I'm like, at some point the buck has to stop, and you have to say, okay, these are the decisions that I have made. I have to lie in it, and now if it is to the point where Bryce isn't what we think he is, then that is fine. But if Andy Dalton comes out, like, I won't be surprised if Andy Dalton comes out and pitches a similar game. Not to as bad as it's been, but
to Bryce.
But to Bryce, I just don't see him putting up 25. Because the reason why Frank Reich and why Andy Dalton looked good in the Seattle game is because that offense was built for a quarterback like Andy Dalton. Right. And those systems that Frank Reich had perpetrated, there's a reason why Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, those were the guys that were in Indianapolis, and then the minute he leaves, Anthony Richardson comes into town. But if you look at the quarterbacks that Canales has been working with in his tenure, that he's revitalized in Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith, those do not fit the archetype of Andy Dalton. They fit the archetype of Bryce Young, closer, at least a little bit. You're more mobile, undersized with Baker Mayfield, more mobile and kind of strong-willed with the two of them. That doesn't speak to Andy Dalton, in my opinion.
Here's the thing about Andy Dalton. This game this week, I think it's gonna be bad again because it's not like Andy played in the preseason. He hasn't played in quite some time.
He hasn't played he hasn't touched the field in almost a year.
Right. So I don't really expect him to look, worlds better. if he can, the thing is going to be if he can get Excel going. So what happens now if you get Excel touches? Okay, now then what happens when you get Deontay Johnson some touches? Now, and again, back to the narrative that you said, JB, about they're looking at it from a perspective of it's him, not us. And that's definitely gonna be the sticking point when because he's a veteran quarterback. He's gonna be able to lean on what he's learned throughout his years of playing NFL football more so than whatever Canales and Idzik are gonna feed him. Andy Dalton's a pro's pro. He's gonna make plays. We know that, but like I feel like the narrative's gonna get pushed somewhere where it shouldn't.
Exactly.
That's his thing.
And that's my
here is where I disagree with both of you. I think bad in what you mean by bad is I don't think we're gonna look like we've been looking. And what I mean by that is I don't think we're gonna go out there and look like a totally discombobulated team. And the reason I say that is part of this move, even though it's ugly, it's probably David Tepper driven. There's a lot of things behind it. I ultimately believe Bryce had lost the locker room.
And see, this is
and for me, that's bigger than any stat, any amount of money you're talking about. Because once you lose the locker room, it doesn't matter who you got on that squad. You're not going to win games. And that's a proven formula throughout history. So I think that was a bigger reason, too, why Dave Canales, even if the conversation wasn't driven primarily by him, that he was more agreeable to it. Because as a first-year coach, you can't lose your locker room first year, second game in.
No. See,
So there's pressure on that side, too.
I disagree with you. I don't think he'd lost the locker room solely because of just like I'll put in my little bit of extra like interactions and being in the
inside a bit, dog. The inside scoop.
I've been in the locker rooms, and I was in the locker room on Monday, and it'll be interesting to see what happens Wednesday and the open locker room, because there was a smaller amount of players on Monday. They had their team meetings, then a lot of them come down to work out, what have you, get stretched, whatever. Every player we talked to, including Andy Dalton, I mean, Tommy Tremble was in like damn near in tears when we talked to him. And this was hours after it was called, because he said verbatim, we failed Bryce Young. We know what he does week in and week out. Okay. And what has been happening on Sundays is a direct result of the fact that we're not doing our jobs to facilitate him looking like he has looked in the past. And even, Austin Corbett was like, social media pundits and the media can say what they want. They're not here in the building. They don't see how he works and operates. And he said, this is going to be an issue of a whole team. That has been the narrative the entire time through the locker room. And obviously a lot of times you're not going to put your quarterback under the bus. But even Adam Thielen, who was visibly upset on the sideline on Sunday, went back and said, Bryce is a ball player. Bryce is a football player. He knows what to do to be good in this league, and we have to get him there. And he said, so every person we talked to, defensively, offensively, their mindset was, we failed him. And that was even Canales' mindset. Okay. Canales, week 1, said this is not a Bryce Young issue. This is a team issue across the board. So I don't think it was a locker room issue, because even when Canales was starting out in the preseason, he said, normally I have to come into these situations, or I've had, mentors tell me that when you come into the situation, you have to regroup the focus, regroup the chemistry and the culture of the locker room. And he said when he came here, he didn't have to do that because the leadership in the locker room was still existent. So I think that's where it's not a locker room issue. I really do believe that either Tepper came in and said, you got to make a switch because we're the laughing stock of the league. Our tickets are $1.83 a piece, and I can't have this anymore. And if the quickest solution or change is your quarterback, then make that change. Or Canales said, was hearing the whispers of you got to start winning. We're trying to do so now. We're not in rebuilding. We're in competing mode, and got scared to go. Okay, I have to jump the gun. And because even Bryce said, even the inside sources of Bryce said that it was a complete shock to him. And of Bryce, I've never heard him to be disingenuous in anything that he has said, and to the media, to outside sources, what have you. if he was surprised by it, like, I believe not because he said, I've been good enough to stay, to stay on the field, but because he had been told by the front office, we're not moving away from you that fast. We're giving you this time frame, continue to progress, continue to work forward. But in the press conference afterwards, you could tell Canales' mind was moved solely onto Andy Dalton. And I think that's incredibly dangerous to Bryce Young. Like, I asked him point blank, I was like, how do you make sure Bryce doesn't get lost in the weeds throughout all of this, like at practice? And he could not give me a straight answer.
Because you can't, bro. Like,
you say, all right, we're going to make sure obviously Andy gets the first team reps, but keeping Bryce in the wings right beside him going, all right, run, shadowing him throughout. You don't have to give him first team reps, but you can't just disregard him.
But is that a coaching thing or is that a Bryce thing, right? Like that at that point, the coach is not instructing him to do that. I think Bryce would do that.
But he basically made it sound like Bryce.
He
basically made it sound like Bryce was on his own. He was like, and if Bryce comes and does what is to an NFL standard to keep working as a backup, then he'll be fine.
And I'll speak for Panthers Nation from the Twitter perspective, and a lot of people that were obviously big Bryce pundits and big Bryce fans and wanting him to succeed. I mean, I even saw it from one of them. They said, like, hey, straight up, like, I want to see him take it.
I do too.
Like this, and I hate to make this feel like a damn film, a feature film, and then he's gonna come back and, but I do hope that somewhere, somehow, he stays with it mentally, does not check out, stays locked in, and is able to get that job back. Because I would much rather go into Sundays watching Bryce Young play decent to good football than watch Andy Dalton play great.
I agree with you 100%.
I'm like,
1,000.
But that's a huge gamble to put on his mentality because he has never had to, I don't want to say he's never faced adversity on the field, but he has earned and gotten the starting role every level he's played at up until maybe like middle school ball. He has not had to be in this position. He's maybe had to sit in the wings and wait a little bit. At Alabama, you're just going to have to do that. But even then, it was... So you're banking on the 50-50 chance of either this unlocks the dog mentality in him to come back and win this job. But the problem is you're not in the preseason anymore. Winning it was in the preseason, they bench him. He performs better in preseason. If you're not going to give him game reps, what is he going to do in practice to win the rollback?
Well, this goes back to what you all said during the preseason about wanting to see these guys play. So I gotta give credit to both of y'all in that because I was on the wrong end of the stick on that one. Whereas that all should have happened during the preseason. All the adversity, all the competition, all of that has to happen before we get here. Because why are we here now?
Yeah.
And we're doing this. Like I was under the impression that hey, we knew this was gonna look not great. Yeah. I didn't think we were gonna lose 47-10.
Neither did I.
I didn't think Bryce would just throw for 84 yards in the following week. So I don't know. I think that shell shocked everybody in the building so bad that now the red button had to get pushed. At least, coming from, a bald-headed man from up top, like he forced the red button to get pushed.